We are recording. So I will introduce myself first. My name is Vanessa Baca. I'm the manager for the Office of Neighborhood Coordination for the City of Albuquerque. I want to welcome all of our attendees and I want to welcome our panelists to this ONC Lunch and Learn on benefits and best practices of neighborhood newsletters. I am going to have our three panelists introduce themselves. I will start with Joy with you. Go ahead.
Joy Hood, newsletter editor of the North Wyoming Neighborhood Association.
Great, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be part of the panel. Cynthia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia Serna. I am now the treasurer and past president for the past 5 or 6 years of the Mile High Neighborhood Association in kind of Midtown Albuquerque.
Thank you. And Cynthia has been a panelist a couple of other times, so I'm always grateful for her expertise on these matters. Thanks, Cynthia. And last but definitely not least, Bill.
Hello, everybody. My name is William C. Herring, Bill Herring. I am the president of the Los Terranes Neighborhood Association. I'm the editor of the Los Terranes Neighborhood News, and want to tell you all about what it's like to put out a neighborhood newsletter.
Definitely interesting, isn't it? So thank you again to our attendees who are part of this as well. I appreciate you all taking the time. So the basic structure of these webinars is I will go ahead and I will start in by asking the panelists these questions that I had already sent you in advance, give you all an opportunity to just talk about the topic at hand. Our attendees are welcome to type their questions about the topic into the chat. We will get to their questions at the end. And if, basically, if there are no questions at that point, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. I've scheduled us for an hour and a half. Sometimes it'll take the full hour and a half. Other times we end before that. So just FYI on that. But yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I got another thing at 1:30, so I may have to cut out about 1:15.
That's totally fine. I completely understand. Like I said, I appreciate you taking the time. So we'll go ahead and jump into our questions right away. So the first question I have is, Bill, we'll start with you since you are on a little bit of a time constraint. How long have you been handling your neighborhood newsletter?
Oh, gosh, 20 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was when we moved into the Los Terranes. For those of you that don't know, Los Terranes is a neighborhood, very old and established neighborhood association, and our boundaries are I-40 on the south, the Rio Grande River on the west, Rio Grande Boulevard on the east, and then a street called Los Anayas on the north. And there's about 850 residents in our neighborhood association. And I've been president for, God, it seems like forever, 12 years. And so I've been responsible for getting the newsletter out for the past 12 years.
Okay. Joy, what about you? How long have you been doing the newsletter for your association?
10 years.
Okay. And Cynthia? You're muted.
Well, the neighborhood newsletter in Mile High was started at least 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I have not been involved in it for that long. I've been involved in writing and helping to put it together for probably about the past 6 years. And Danielle DeRosa, who's currently a board member, and she had hoped to be here today, but she has a good set of priorities and is at her daughter's kindergarten celebration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She's been involved in designing and producing the newsletter for probably about the past 10 years.
Okay, great.
So, I also want to just let folks know the boundaries for Mile High are Lomas and Constitution on the north and south, and San Mateo and San Pedro on the east and west.
Yeah.
And I just want to note that for the past several years, we typically publish the newsletter 3 times a year, except for last year. We only did a couple, and we do occasionally also distribute some other flyers or alerts in addition to the newsletter. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I can say as somebody who has done a newsletter in every aspect of my career, starting from my very first job when I finished college up to now the weekly e-news, it is a lot of moving parts. And so I give you all kudos for you doing it, because I know firsthand that it's not an easy thing to do. So, you know, I appreciate the effort you all put into your publications. I think they're, you know, really great contributions to our neighborhoods here in the city. So now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation, and I will start with Cynthia, because we just finished with you. Cynthia, what have been some of the challenges you and your association have experienced in putting together the newsletter, either in getting content for the newsletter or distributing it to your neighbors?
Well, I would say first of all, because we have a print newsletter that we distribute, the cost for production and printing is probably one of the challenges. It's supported largely by ads from local businesses. And this, of course, was, you know, particularly a challenge over the past couple of years when a lot of our businesses were struggling. So we had to keep the newsletter a lot shorter. Another challenge is probably just the timing and the timeliness of the information in the newsletter, making sure it doesn't go out of date before we go through the whole publication process. It's a little bit labor intensive because it is a print newsletter, but we do have a lot of folks who are on board with helping, so that you know, that's good. And as I'm sure everybody knows, not everyone always reads it. So a challenge is to make sure that you kind of either get them hooked or put the most important information, you know, up front. And one other challenge I'll mention is just we don't have an active website right now to post it on. We might, again, at some point in the future, but we do have an active Facebook page.
Okay, great. Bill, I know this is something you and I had talked about offline. What are some of the challenges you and the Los Duranes Association have had over the years, either with the same issues with getting content or with getting it published or distributing it? You're muted.
Those are three huge topics, and
I know.
I'll talk about content first. Okay, we have 6 meetings a year. Okay, the third Wednesday of every odd month, and before every one of those meetings, we put out our newsletter announcing the meeting. Okay, and you got to come up with content to have it for your meeting. And you know, we have and again, it's timing, because you got to get it out for the meeting to tell people about the meeting, and then you've got to come up with things to happen at the meeting that are still timely. And depending on what time of year it is, you could have a candidates forum, which we've done many times on our state offices, and judicial candidate meetings, and Rio Grande Conservancy District candidate forums and things like that. And if the timing's not right, then you have the people who got elected to come and talk about, you know, what they're going to do, or, you know, what's going to happen in the upcoming legislative session. And, you know, and you get your city councilor to come and talk. I mean, they love to, I mean, it's free publicity for them to talk to their constituents. And you have to kind of, you know, like one of the things that, okay, this is just a one that I grabbed from January 2020, that we have I arrange for a dumpster to be at the park for people to use on a certain Saturday. And this advertises that. You advertise your board of directors meetings or board of directors elections. You know, the next meeting, it's going to be a board of directors, and anyone who wants to be on the board of directors, call me, and, you know, things like that. And we also we partner with the Los Duranes Community Center and their schedule of things as well. And the Montessori school on the Rio Grande is also in our neighborhood, and we help them out. So, you know, content is important, but sometimes you got to go create it yourself.
Yeah. Joy, what about you? What have been some of the challenges you've had with your neighborhood newsletter in terms of either getting content or getting it distributed among your neighbors?
Well, we only have 2 a year, so content is usually as much of a problem. Distribution has been a problem in the past with the printed, trying to get it out to the neighborhoods using scout troops, different things. This last time we switched to postcard mailing as a meeting notice, and the newsletter went out as email and then mailed to whatever few and was available at the meeting. And that helped a lot just with the changes.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, that's great. And this is just a suggestion. This is something that I kind of learned myself over the years from doing all the different newsletters I've done, is if you don't already do this, one good way to always have just a reliable source of content is to, I get a ton of newsletters in my email box on a daily basis, the Bernalillo County, from all the different state departments, from some federal resources, different neighborhood groups, different community groups. So I pretty much kind of pick my content from all of those. And I know some other neighborhoods who do newsletters take a lot of their content from the weekly e-news that I send out. So that's just an idea. If some people hadn't thought about that, that's a really good, way to do it as well. And if you're on social media channels, that's another good way to get information. The city, the One Albuquerque Instagram account, huge amount of information that you all could use in your newsletter. So just FYI, and I'm happy to send you those direct links if that's something that's of interest, or to our attendees as well. So just a little.
We steal content liberally from
Yeah.
you. So.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I forgot to mention
Steal
that.
away. Steal away, please. No, I'm glad. That makes me happy that the information I share is of use. So no, please take what you need.
Yep, I forgot to mention that those fascinating weekly columns we get from the Office of Neighborhood Coordination have tons of great stuff if you're looking for content in your newsletter.
And I just want to say that I did not pay Bill to say that. He said he came up with it on his own. So thanks, Bill. So Joy, I will start with you for this next question. Do you partner with any local businesses or other groups or organizations in your neighborhood to help disseminate the newsletter? And if you do, what have those partnerships been like?
Well, we've paid scout troops in the past to get it out, and COVID's changed a lot of the things with that. People are cautious having their kids roam neighborhoods and things.
Absolutely.
So we've actually quit doing it that way and switched to the postcard notification. And then the bulk of our membership has opted to get their newsletter via email.
Okay.
And so there's not that many print ones we mail out anymore.
Yeah. I think that's just an ongoing trend that we're seeing across the board in our city with a lot of groups, just because of like you said, the challenges in doing a print newsletter. Cynthia, what about you? Does your association partner with any groups for anything for your newsletter, with dissemination or anything like that?
Well, we've used a local neighborhood print shop for a lot of years. So that's really been good, and they're very fast and love doing it. And
it's a good way to partner with a local business in your area too, isn't it?
And as I mentioned before, the cost is really supported by ads from local businesses. So, we have a lot of very loyal repeat advertisers, which is great. So it's a good way to partner with the local businesses. We do use a printed rather than emailed newsletter, because we just don't have a lot of emails of members, and a lot of them are reluctant to share that. And frankly, it's also an opportunity for us to do some in-person engagement with neighbors and with local businesses. As far as the dissemination part, we actually have a network of street captains that are residents in the neighborhood. We have a long-time street captain coordinator. He's been doing it as long as I can remember. And it's a lot of the folks who serve as street captains, it's their way of participating rather than being on the board, and they may not necessarily be active in a lot of other things, but that's how they can contribute to the neighborhood. So that works well for us.
That's a really good idea as well. Thank you for that, Cynthia. And Bill, I know you and I had also talked about this previously. You had mentioned having it's like a paper route utilized. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So print up 850 newsletters.
Mhm.
Okay, I've got a army of paper delivery persons who have their assigned routes, certain streets, and I print up 850 of these and then divide them up into each bundle for each newspaper delivery person and get that bundle to that person, and they're in charge of putting one not in the mailbox but next to the mailbox at every house on their route. Okay. And people love it. And it was, even before COVID, it was becoming, I was having a hard time getting enough delivery persons. And, I would beg for them in the newsletter. And I also, for months, for 3 or 4 episodes of the newsletter, I said, look, we're thinking about moving to email. Please send me your email address so I can make an email list. And we do, but with the paper copy, we hand delivered 850 of them. Okay. I only have about 200 or maybe 250 names on my email address. So there's 600 people that aren't getting the newsletter. And then my neighborhood is, there's lots of old people and don't do email and things like that. And then they're missing out. And God help me, but I'm thinking about going back to the paper newsletter, because we did switch to email, and I just find it unsatisfying, because otherwise, that 850 people got this copy of this and are informed of what's going on. So I'm hoping that since about the past couple of years that we haven't done a paper one, that we've been doing only email, that more energetic folks have moved into the neighborhood, and that we can start up a paper one. But it's an onerous task. I've got my own paper route is about 100 papers, which I deliver on my bike.
So you're like a paper boy. You have your own paper route.
Well, paper person.
The paper person. That's right. That's right. We have to be politically correct. Paper person. No, and you make a really good point, Bill, when you talk about that, because you can definitely understand the benefit of having an electronic newsletter, but there's also some very good benefits to having a print one. And I think that's why it's important for every neighborhood association to think about their demographics within their neighborhood. I mean, you all are the experts on your neighborhoods. You know the people who live there better than anyone else. So it's really good that you take that into consideration. And if people prefer the print one, like you were saying, Bill, then I think that's fantastic that you're utilizing it.
And like Cynthia said, some of the paper boys,
paper persons,
they're not on the board, and they don't come to the meetings, but that's their way of contributing to the neighborhood, is having a paper route. And that's fine,
That's fantastic. Yes, there's many ways that you can participate with your neighborhood.
Yeah, but the paper copy is just, it's hard, hand delivered. It's just hard to beat for really getting through to the neighborhood.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm glad that works for you. So Bill, we'll go back to you. What is your favorite aspect of working with your neighborhood newsletter, and what is your least favorite aspect?
My most favorite is that we get it out and people come to the meetings holding their newsletter, or people email or call, about something in the newsletter, or if, say, we have a dumpster at the park, which we do twice a year, and that there's a huge turnout for that. Okay, and the only way they can find out about that is because of the newsletter. And that's the part that makes me feel the best, when we have a big turnout at our meetings, and all the rest of it I hate.
Oh, I don't think that's true. You do a good job. You wouldn't.
Not hate. It's just awesome responsibility, because you're announcing a meeting, and so you got to get it out. Like hopefully a week before the meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Troy, what about you? What are your favorite aspects and least favorite aspects of working with your neighborhood newsletter?
We usually include events that are going to go around town, try to include that in there. And I think in trying to cull the list down, I discover so many things happening, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Least favorite, I think lack of space. It's trying to make things concise but still coherent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge for sure. You're trying to decide to what level of detail you want to put in your newsletter content. No, I do understand. What about you, Cynthia, for the Mile High newsletter? What's your favorite and least favorite aspects of it? Or working with it, I should say.
Yeah, I first I'll say that similar to Bill's newsletter, we do use the newsletter as a vehicle to let people know, give people notice of our meetings and elections, events, things like that. So that's important. I think for me, as a communication tool, there's always issues that are going on in the neighborhoods. It's a way to get that across, but it's also a great opportunity for us to share positive stuff that's happening in the neighborhood, because there's so much negative news out there.
Yeah.
So, the opportunity to, at least have an upbeat spin on the president's column, which is the first page of the newsletter, and also share some, projects that are going on, information on things like the farmers market and the food truck night. And we also highlight, try to feature some articles on new businesses or longtime businesses in the neighborhood. So that opportunity to share positive news in a world that's full of negatives right now,
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things. Personally, my least favorite thing is asking businesses for money. And I also not really good at the door-to-door thing, but very fortunately, we do have folks in the neighborhood who are good at those things. So I don't have to worry about that too much.
Yeah. Fundraising can be a little bit tricky, can't it? Especially if you're not comfortable with it. No, I get it. That's good that you have some people who are able to help you with it.
Those are both the reasons why I would never be able to be a good candidate for public office.
I don't know. I think you'd be pretty good, Cynthia.
If somebody else could do the door.
Yeah. So Cynthia, since we're on you, I'll start with you for the next question. And this is probably something that's going to be of interest to all of our attendees and panelists. What software or program do you use to put together and publish your newsletter? And do any of your, I know you said that there's someone else who actually does the actual putting together of your newsletter. How have you been able to solicit support within your association to put your newsletter together?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll say, again, the president's column is the first page. So it's I usually pick some sort of a theme for, depending on the season or what's going on. So I write that. Other board members or association members will write other pieces of the content. And of course, as I said before, we do steal stuff from ONC and, and contact information like, during COVID, like the phone numbers, public safety information, we put that kind of stuff in. And we have the network of street captains again. So that's, another way that we engage with people in the neighborhood. The board typically decides on the content. So, they'll either write different pieces or contact people. In terms of the software, Danielle DeRosa, who's been the producer of the news for a long time, she takes what we write and send her, and I did talk to her about this beforehand because I didn't know what she used, but she does this as for a living. She does graphic design and magazines and newsletters, so she uses Adobe InDesign through a subscription that she has from Adobe Creative Cloud. So she said that she wanted to mention that she uses and really highly recommends using clip art and to keep things fun and appealing. Don't overdo it, but making it visually appealing and fun is helpful. And she's really an expert at manipulating fonts and space to fit everything in, and you know, since we also share Joy's concern about having limited space. So
Yes, for
she's
sure.
really good at it. So.
Having seen your newsletter, she does a really great job. So please pass my compliments on to her. She, you know, as somebody who does newsletters, you know, for a living, no, she does a great job. So Joy, what about your newsletter? What software do you, or program do you use to put it out? And have you been able to solicit help from other people within your organization to help you with it?
I put it together in Word and then it goes out as a PDF in the email and it's taken as a PDF for printing.
Okay.
So it's fairly simple and it's just 4 pages, so it's not extremely difficult. Content's decided at board meeting generally.
Okay.
A letter from president, usually in response to concerns of the neighborhood. We might address. We have ongoing things like apps that would be helpful to people that the city has, or otherwise information like that. And then sometimes the past speaker has shared information. Not everybody was able to attend. There might be some key things that we share in the newsletter from a past meeting.
Okay.
And then we do items of interest, events happening around town, just to let people know things that there are things available to do. So it's kind of a little bit of a formula. And most years we've done an overall crime report, this many, you know, just an overview of property crime versus other things within our association area, just for information.
Okay, great. Bill, what about you for the Los Doranos neighborhood? What software or program do you use to put it together, and who within your association contributes to content or anything else for the newsletter?
One of the board of directors is an architect and a graphic designer, and I write the prose and send it to him, and he turns it into this work of art. Okay, comes up with the pictures, arranges it, you know, I mean, everything. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what software he does it. I'm just glad he does it. Okay. Yeah. And what was the other question?
Oh, just what is your experience in soliciting, getting content from other members of your association?
Well, sometimes being a control freak perfectionist isn't that it's cracked up to be. And so, and some of the board members will contribute some things, but, you know, usually it's just me and, you know, arranging for the things that you're going to be talking about in the newsletter. Like, you know, here we've got our representative and senator are going to talk about what's coming up. That involves me calling them up and saying, hey, will you come talk at our meeting, our upcoming meeting, and, you know, getting them to confirm so I can put it in the newsletter. And then we've got about our city councilor who's going to be coming to the meeting. And then some people had complained about dog poop and unleashed dogs in the park. So I turned that into an article. And the trash dumpster is going to be at the park, and the board of directors election. And the Montessori of the Rio Grande School is in our neighborhood, which is a charter school, an APS charter school, which is by lottery only. Okay. So and of course we want as many Los Doranos kids going to this charter school that's right in our neighborhood. So I always, you know, publicize their lottery information because, you know, because students from all over the city come to this school, and I just want as many as possible here. And also the community center, I'll publish their schedule of events in there, because, you know, unless you go to the community center, there'd be no way of you knowing. So you know, we work closely with them. We work closely with Montessori, and you know, that's where the content comes from.
Okay, those are all really good ideas. You know, and additional ways to partner with groups in your neighborhood to get more content. So it's a really good idea. People have, I've got a few questions that I got before this webinar started are specific to what types of software are recommended to do newsletters. Speaking from my own professional experience, It really just depends on what your capacity is. There are people that do newsletters in Microsoft Word, that's perfectly acceptable. There's a program through Microsoft called Publisher. Publisher is basically like, it's like a desktop publishing program. It's actually gotten quite a bit more sophisticated over the years. You can incorporate graphics. You can work with fonts, as Cynthia was talking about, their newsletter coordinator who put theirs together. The software program that I use for the weekly e-news is called MailChimp, and it is a paid subscription. That's something, if your neighborhood association thought that was something you would be interested in utilizing, I can recommend it. It's I kind of had to teach myself how to use it, but it's not difficult. It's fairly intuitive how to use. You can set up different templates. You can set up graphics, similar like that. There is a really good program. It's free to use, but you do have to pay if you use some of their images. And it's called canva.com. And I will actually type that into the chat. And that's something that I would recommend for our folks who are thinking about having a newsletter, or maybe have had some trouble or aren't quite sure what to use. I would recommend setting up an account and just going in and playing around with it. They have graphics, they have fonts, you can incorporate videos, you can do flyers, you can do social media posts, you can do newsletters, you can do anything and everything. It's a really, really good program. Like I said, there is a small cost associated with it if you use a picture or a graphic or a certain font, but you can download into a JPEG file or a PDF. It's very handy. So I highly recommend that as another option for newsletters as well. And then of course there is what Cynthia was talking about, which is Adobe InDesign. And that's a pretty specialized software. It's very powerful. It has a lot of potential. People tend to use it for really, very sophisticated graphic design. I do have, a background in using it. And for you all who remember when the ONC did the monthly newsletter, the neighborhood news, that was a print, and that was done in Adobe InDesign as well. And it's a wonderful program if you have it and know how to work with it. But it does take a lot of specialized knowledge to really make it work for you. So if you're fortunate enough to have someone in your association who can work with it and do your newsletter with it, that's great. But if you don't, there's many other options available as well. So just wanted to, put that out there for our folks who are thinking about doing a newsletter as well. So Joy, I'll go ahead and go back with you. What are some best practices or recommendations you can share with our attendees in terms of doing a neighborhood newsletter?
Best practice. Well, ours is kind of set up with an ongoing template that we use of information that we get out. And I think that makes it a lot easier for me to put together, because we've got the president's letter, we've got things of interest happening around town. We have, different people have things to send in response to the speaker. So I think for us, just having kind of a set format has made it simplest.
I agree. I use a set template for mine as well, and it really saves a lot of time. You're not having to constantly redesign your newsletter or reinvent the wheel, as the saying goes. So that's a very good best practice, Joy. Thank you for that. Bill, what about you for the Los Terranos? What's the best practice you would recommend in terms of newsletters?
Get it done early and get it to the newspaper carriers as early as you can, which is difficult sometimes. Our meetings are on Wednesday, and I try and be giving out the newsletter bundles on Saturday morning. So they'll have 5 days to do the home delivery. That's the best practice.
Okay.
I mean, you're advertising your meeting, and if you want to give people a little heads up.
Yeah. Okay. That's a very good idea. Try and get it done as early as you can. It's not always easy, but that's definitely a good suggestion.
Not too far in advance, so they'll forget. But right.
Well, and that's something else to think about too. Is if you put something out too far in advance, people will likely forget about it. That's something that I myself have learned in promoting different things. Is you put something out too early, it's gonna fall off their radar. So no, that's a good suggestion, Bill.
And not the day of either.
And not what?
And not the day of either.
That's a good idea as well. So Cynthia, what about you for the Mile High neighborhood folks? What's the best practice you would recommend in terms of newsletters?
Yeah, I would agree with, in terms of sticking to the timing, and we try
Mm-hmm.
to set deadlines for when the articles need to be submitted. We have kind of a schedule of when they get submitted to me in the past, and and then sent to Danielle for putting together, and then, you know, she'll contact the printers
Yeah.
and the timing in terms of getting it back and distributing. I mean, we try to really stick to that schedule so that we
Sure.
get them out in a timely way. And I also agree not getting it out too soon when you're announcing a meeting, but not at the last minute, especially, you know, when you're
Yeah.
talking about a spring meeting and people have a lot of things going on.
Uh-huh.
I actually have a few best practices that I think are important. I think it's important to use the expertise and the strengths and resources you already have in front of you in terms of your board members and other members of the association. We've been pretty fortunate in those terms. You know, it means you kind of got to get to know the people that are on your board and what they
Yeah.
like to do and what they're willing to, you know, their expertise and the skills that they're willing to share. I would also say, as much as possible in your newsletter, try to steer clear of partisan or controversial
Woohoo.
But
Yeah.
but that being said, it's also important not to be shy about talking about important about opportunities for public input
Mhm.
on issues and projects that really affect the neighborhood. I think you need to make sure that those opportunities are out there. You know, as I mentioned before, I usually choose a theme for my front page column. And, you know, obviously you're not going to connect with everyone in the neighborhood. Not everyone's going to agree with the things that you have to say, but sometimes just coming from a place of clarity and sincerity and openness will resonate with most people. But we try as much as possible not to talk about partisan politics, because that can turn people off.
Yeah.
But to not just that newsletter, but reading anything else that you send out. And a couple other things I would say: if you have photos that are good visuals of events, it's nice to share those, because people like to see themselves in photos and other people that they know. And also just always be sure to include the local businesses in your distribution. I think it's important for them to feel included and part of the neighborhood. And be sure to email a copy of it to your elected officials so that they know what's going on in the neighborhood and that it's active, and that, you know, also if people are paying attention to what they're doing, I think is.
That's an excellent one. That was just what was one that was going to be something that I recommended to people, but you did it already, Cynthia. Is keep your elected officials in the loop in terms of your newsletters as well. I also did want to kind of offer another resource in terms of graphics and photos. The city of Albuquerque has a website where you can download free images of the city of Albuquerque, different neighborhoods, mountain, you know, really nice pictures of parks, pictures of houses. I will type that website into the chat. It's called freeabqimages.com. And I think I had promoted it in the weekly e-news at one point, but I will. Yeah, and again, they're free. You don't have to give credit. You don't have to worry about copyright issues. I mean, they're technically owned by the city, but the city is offering them for people to use. You can use them for your websites. You can use them for your social media. You can use them for your flyers, newsletters, anything. So I use a lot of those images in the weekly e-news, and I highly recommend them. And they're very good quality, so they're appropriate for any type of publication. So there you go. Bill, I saw you had your hand raised. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I agree with. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
That's kind of coming through kind of echoey here. I agree with Cynthia in that avoid partisan. Okay, I mean, if you're going to have a candidates forum, you know, you invite for, say it's in the primaries. Okay, you invite all of the candidates from one side, and all the candidates from the other side. I mean, you can't not just from one side. I mean, you know, usually sometimes there's a lot more from one side, but you want to invite, invite every single one. And usually in the primaries, these candidates are fighting for attention, and you know, they'll they'll usually show up. And we've had some very well-attended candidates forums in the primary stage of elections. And, but, invite everybody. And, if you can, if they don't get back to you, say, to confirm their attendance, say, you can say, well, they were invited, but I don't know what, I don't know why they didn't show up, but they were invited.
Sure. Okay. All right. Great idea. That's a very good suggestion. Did any of you have anything else that you wanted to add? Any other ideas or tips or suggestions before we get into our questions from our attendees?
Cost. Okay, printing a paper newsletter, the cost can be prohibitive.
Yeah.
Okay, especially, and you've got to try and work with, try and find a way that you can print it for free. Sometimes I've been successful doing that, sometimes not. Staples will charge you a lot to do it.
Mhm.
And same with mailing costs, it's if you can somehow work it where you can do it all for free, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks of there's benefits and drawbacks to every method. That's definitely one of them when it comes to doing a print newsletter that I've heard from many neighborhoods. So that's a very good point, Bill. Something to consider. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you for all of that. So I'm going to jump into our questions from our attendees that have been typed into the chat. We're going to start with Diana Shea. Hi, Diana. Thanks for your question. Diana's asking, in general, do neighborhood associations send their newsletters to just members or to all residents of the neighborhood? What do you all do? Joy, we'll start with you.
I think it goes out to membership for sure. In the past, we would do one newsletter that went out. That's where they had the scouts try to put it on every door at least once a year. And that was that required notification, I think, that we had. I don't think the second one always did that. I don't actually do that part. A membership person takes care of the details of that for us.
Okay. Okay. Bill, and you were saying you already kind of told us how your association does it. You have your print one and you have people who deliver it.
Right. Every residence in Los Terranes gets one.
Okay.
Being a member of the association, a dues paying signed up member just means that you're allowed to vote in the board of directors elections. Okay. Other than that, everybody, trying to separate members from non-members would be an onerous task.
Yeah.
So yeah, every single residence gets one.
Okay, great. And Cynthia?
Yeah, we try to get it to all the residents in the neighborhood and also the businesses. We have businesses all along San Pedro and Lomas in particular. Really the membership just, it doesn't preclude people from voting anymore. The city renewed ordinance, but I will say that in the last newsletter I sent out, we talked about that change in the president's column on the front page, but I also put a plea out there and told people, to be honest, things do cost money. We need your support to continue to publish the newsletter and to participate and support some of the activities like farmers market, and put a plea out there. And we probably got more memberships than in response to the newsletter than we've gotten before. So, sometimes just being honest with people about, you need your money is a good thing, but it goes to everybody.
That's good. And that Diana, to kind of go to sort of add to what the panelists said, the majority of the neighborhood associations in the city do distribute their or make the attempt to distribute their newsletters to all of the residents and businesses and organizations, churches or nonprofits within their boundaries. It's really the determination that works best for your association, but most people choose to just share their newsletter with as many people as they can, because it's a really good way to talk about what the neighborhoods do. And it's a good way to recruit members, as Cynthia was talking about. So, really whatever works best for your association. So our next one is from Ellen Dewicki. And Ellen, I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, but Ellen's question is, our email list is only 10% of the neighborhood and all of them are not paying members. She would like to distribute printed newsletters to everyone. our newsletter, our neighborhood is mostly residential with very few businesses. Are there other ways to come up with costs? Is this something any one of you feel like kind of what Cynthia, I think Cynthia logged off, but Bill or Joy, any thoughts on that?
You be inventive and, know who's got to know which businesses have good copiers in their, as part of their business, and just be persuasive. And Montessori, we work with them. We help we help publicize their school in our newsletter, and so sometimes they help us out. And you just have to be inventive, resourceful.
Yeah. Enjoy. Any thoughts on that?
Well, in the past, when they tried to get the newsletter out to everyone, it was the once a year. It was done out of the dues. And when we had the scouts distributing it, it was kind of a fundraiser for whichever troop that used to do it back in the day. But yeah, it was just considered a cost of having the association, was at least getting it out there that once a year.
Yeah.
Everyone to let them know. Still do some notification for the second meeting, but then only on the second meeting, just for people who attend or are members, I believe.
Yeah. And I know there are a couple of neighborhood associations who traditionally have not, or at least there are quite a few that have not traditionally charged dues. And so but one of them that I know has done specifically has partnered with a local church in their neighborhood. And so the church has offered to do the newsletter printing, and in exchange for, advertising the church and some other things. So that's just one other idea for people, if you live in an area where you maybe don't have a lot of businesses like some neighborhoods, if there's any other organization within your boundary that's maybe another idea to partner with them and see if they would be willing to partner with you on a newsletter. So there's just another suggestion there. Question from Clancy Starbucks. I'm sorry, what? Cynthia?
Oh, I was just going to say that I got kicked off.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
I got kicked off on my computer, so I have a feeling I missed some questions, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm going over the questions in the chat. So the one I had just addressed was what would some suggestions for a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of businesses? What would be some ways to come up with costs for the newsletter?
Right. Okay.
And so that's what Joy and Bill were addressing.
Okay.
So Clancy Tarbox is asking, would anybody be willing to share a sample of their newsletter by email if any of you, if your panelists would be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Clancy, what I'll do is I will have them, I will have Bill and Joy and Cynthia email me copies of their newsletter, and then I can email that to everybody who's an attendee. Would that work for everybody? Great. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think I saw someone had asked about the ad rates. Also, I might have missed.
Okay.
That.
So there is a question. I'm kind of just going in order as the questions come in. So yeah. So the next question we have is from Nana Perkin. Nana, hi, I'm glad you could join us. And Nana's question is actually for you, Cynthia. Would you share your guidelines for determining how much to charge for ads from businesses?
Absolutely, and I can actually email that to you too. You could send our rate sheet that we distribute to the businesses. We have various sizes of ads that people can do: a business card size, quarter page, half page, or a full page. And and we do have some people that are repeat, and they'll do it every issue.
Great.
Rio Grande Credit Union does a full page every time, which is a great support. But a lot of people will do the business card size, which I think is $18 for the newsletter each time.
And
reasonable.
And if you are trying to get someone to advertise in your newsletter, kind of a business, kind of soften them up a little bit by delivering the newsletter to them a couple times before you hit them up for an ad. Otherwise, because one business opened up in our neighborhood and I went in and tried to convince the owner to it was a coffee shop, and to try and introduce myself, showed him the newsletter, once we put an ad in here, it'll get a, maybe a discount on a cup of coffee, because they were brand new, and the owner thought I was some scam artist off the street trying to rip him off. So,
well, the businesses always get the newsletters here, but sometimes giving them a few extra ones, or we have occasionally comped an ad like for a new business, or business like we have Jerky by Art that's in our neighborhood, and they are big contributors to the farmers market. So we have comped them an ad in the past. It's kind of a thank you for their support, things like that. So I think that kind of that sort of thing helps encourage them to continue to advertise as well. But I'm happy to send the ad rate sheet to you, Vanessa.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we'll do, Nana, is Cynthia and the other panelists will send copies of their newsletter, and Cynthia will include her rate sheet, and I'll send that to everybody who's on the Zoom. Great, okay, thank you. And then we did get another question from Jane Backley, who's with the Santa Fe Village Neighborhood Association, and let me read that out to you, because it's not a topic that I'm very cognizant of how to answer. So Jane was saying she's intrigued by the idea of a neighborhood newsletter, and she recalls that there had been a previous ONC Lunch and Learn session where they were mentioned. At that session, the neighborhood association was selling ads in their newsletter as a way to make funds for, or accrue funds for the neighborhood association. And she asked, how does that work if a neighborhood association is a designated nonprofit organization? Would that be considered income? And what would be the implications for a neighborhood in this scenario? And I am not a tax expert. I'm not a corporation or nonprofit expert, so that's not an answer it's not something I can answer. I can, I did send Jane some resources and people to contact at the Taxation and Revenue Department and Secretary of State, but I wondered if any of you all had experience with that, or first off, if your association is a nonprofit, and if that's been any kind of an issue.
Believe me, you're not going to be making any profit. It'll literally be a nonprofit, okay? So no, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. We're not a 501c3 organization. I know our neighboring neighborhood association, Alvarado Park, is a 501c3. So I don't know how they deal with that, but my inclination is probably that if you're designating the funds for something specific, then that probably would be a way to address that. Having worked for almost 20 years for a nonprofit organization, that was, one of the things that we could do. So, but I'm not an expert on that either. So
yeah. Joy, anything
I have no idea.
Right? I know that was kind of how I felt. Yeah. Tax and nonprofit questions are always a challenge, just because we don't have any subject matter experts in my office on that. But if any of our other attendees have similar questions, I have some resources that I can send your way, and name and email of some people that were on our previous Lunch and Learn, where we did talk about corporations and taxation and nonprofits. So feel free to email me if you would like me to get you that information. Or I'll just, what I'll do is I'll include it with the information I send to everybody when I get these newsletter templates, and that way you all have it just in case you need it. So, did any of our attendees have any other questions for our panelists, or did our panelists want to add anything while we're still on? You don't want to, nothing else?
Nope.
Okay, great. Well, you know what? I think we're at the end. We took only an hour this time. I want to thank everybody again so much. Joy Hood, Bill Herring, Cynthia Cerna, our wonderful panelists. You all are great. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and thank you for everything you do to help your neighborhoods. Our attendees, thank you so much for being here. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions about anything else neighborhood association related. And if you didn't get those links that I put into the, thank you, Diana. If you didn't get those links for Canva and for the freeabqimages.com, I'll include those in the email that I sent to you with all the other information. If nobody else has any other questions, I am going to go ahead and end the session. Thank you all very much for taking the time, and have a wonderful long holiday weekend, and stay well and safe.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.